their own life, what would make you think they could manage yours? Or they are in horrifying debt, they've done illegal things, and you want them to be your financial power of attorney to be in charge of your money. Very dangerous. Or you choose your spouse, which is fine to choose your spouse, but you also need a successor because your spouse is generally aging along with you, or even if they are not the same age as you, they're still aging also. You want to have a successor. You do not want to have co-powers of attorney. So you take your two children that cannot agree on dinner when you serve it, and now you want them to agree on all of the decisions about your life. And then they're going to put you in the middle to mediate, and it's not a good idea. And they have to be able to do what's best, not just what you want or what they want. So you have different views. You're not religious and they are very religious and they want you to follow those things. Probably best not to put them in a position of power. They have to be able to keep detailed records. They have to be able to show up where they're supposed to show up, take you to the appointments. So you always want to consider all of those things. And it is nice if they know your likes and dislikes, because you can have a power of attorney who is not acting. They're just there just in case you need them. And then, like I always tell the example I always use, you leave here and you get hit by a bus. Somebody needs to take over, but you didn't pass away. So it's not going to be your executor of your estate. Who's taking care of things in the meantime? Who has access to your bank accounts that can pay your bills? All of those things. Who's going to make the medical decisions? So you want to have all of that information and plan ahead of time, and the legal document. So a person I used to work for said a power of attorney, financial especially, power of attorney is a license to steal, because you can steal with a power of attorney document and probably not even get in trouble for it. You take a person who their capacity is questionable, or they are easily misled, or they don't remember things. All you have to say is that they agreed to it. And if the power of attorney is your daughter or son, and they're doing things that you don't think that they did the right things, but you don't want to get them in trouble, then you're going to agree when the police come and talk to you and say, oh yeah, they asked me if they could pay their mortgage. I need them to pay their mortgage with my money because I need them to keep taking care of me. They never threatened me. They never provided any pressure when they probably did. If you do think that that's what's happened, and again, if you are serving as someone else's power of attorney and it's somebody whose capacity is questionable, they might accuse you, which in my job, not a big deal. People accuse me all the time of stealing their money, but it's not my mom. It's not my dad who's accusing that. Much harder. And you can request an accounting. So if your child is doing it, and even if your child is doing it for a time, say you're a caregiver for your spouse and you are just overwhelmed right now. So you're doing all of the things. And so they're helping out with other things. And then you look at the bank account, but you haven't really looked at all the bank statements, and it's been a couple of months, but it seems like things are lower. You can request an accounting. That's their responsibility to give you. Again, why you choose someone who can actually do an accounting. And I don't mean they need to be mathematically gifted. They just need to be able to show you what they've paid for. Obvious things like there shouldn't be cash withdrawals out of your account, because as a power of attorney, anyone responsible for someone else's finances, you wouldn't do things like that. You don't take out cash from the bank account and then you can't find the receipt, and what you write checks, you have everything that's trackable. If you request the accounting and they don't give it to you, and they get outraged, and they just don't provide it, or they give you one and you see things that are very questionable, you can revoke their power of attorney. Again, much easier when you're talking about a stranger, not a loved one. And then you contact the agencies that you gave the power of attorney to. So one of the guardians that I work with used to work for an attorney's office. And so they did a lot of powers of attorney. And he would always explain to the person, the principal, the person who's having someone else be their power of attorney. He says, I need you to understand that once this is signed and they leave here and they have that document, they can go to your bank, give them the document, and take all your money. You have to understand how serious it is to make sure that the person you're choosing is the right person. So if you have given that document to anyone, you contact them and tell them that you've now revoked that power of attorney. And then you have to report it to Adult Protective Services and the police. Now, if you don't want to report your family member, your child, your sibling, whoever it is, you can also talk to friends. You can talk to the bank and just lament about how awful it is and that you think this person stole from you. Bankers are mandatory reporters. You can hint to your friends. I wish somebody would call. I cannot call on my own daughter, but I wish somebody would. Hint somebody else to do it if you don't think you can do it. Yeah. Yes. And that is the thing. If you're involved with any agencies, they literally will help you with things like that. You just hint at it. You just suggest it, and they'll ask more questions. The most important thing, and sometimes the way that people will steal from you as your power of attorney, again, if it's a loved one, is it's kind of with the guilt thing. And because they're a family member or a loved one, it's easier for you to fall for it. So, Mom, I want to keep helping you, but I'm having trouble because I'm working so much and, I'm trying to take care of the kids too. And I don't have enough time and I can't seem to pay my bills. And I'm taking off work for you and I can't pay my bills and the kids are suffering and I don't have any money and I can't pay my bills. Then you start helping them, which is lovely when you want to help your children. But when you're older and there's only a finite amount of money, you don't want to do that. And you have to be very careful about things with Medicaid because the majority of people will be on Medicaid at some point if you have to go to a facility. So you don't want to do anything that conflicts with your Medicaid qualification either. So if you want to get a power of attorney for someone, or have someone as your power of attorney, you can go to the state of Colorado website and there's one right on there. And it's only a few pages. And the first page tells you all about what the person will now have authority to do, and then what your responsibilities are, and then all these little check boxes. So if you want your person, your power of attorney, to be able to sell your home, you can check that box. If you don't, because you're nervous about that, don't check the box. And again, you can always change these. You can get a new one signed, or you can consult an attorney. The best thing about doing it with an attorney is now somebody knows you, knows your situation, knows your finances. And then if you talk to your attorney about the fact that you're concerned about what your power of attorney is doing, you've asked them for an accounting, but you haven't gotten one, or you see an accounting and it's questionable, now you have another person on your side. And there are a lot of attorneys that will do this very inexpensively for a power of attorney, like literally a few $100s. So it's a good idea that way. So these are all dependent on capacity. So you can choose a power of attorney as long as you have capacity. You can be 99 and have capacity and choose a power of attorney. You can be 49 and do the same thing. If you don't have capacity, though, you no longer get to choose. And this is the questionable thing. So a lot of my cases that I get as conservator is there was a family member that was financially exploiting the person. So I end up being their conservator now because their financial power of attorney did lots of things that they weren't supposed to do. And sometimes they just have they go and print that document. This is someone telling you, I'm going to be your power of attorney because you need more help. And I have to have this document to be able to help you, which is not true. They can help you, be right alongside of you all of the time. They don't have to have the document to do so. So if somebody pressures you, then they tend to pressure people who are losing their capacity. So they just don't really know anymore. So if somebody is pressuring you or pressuring them and it's a loved one, they go along with it. And then again, if you have the capacity, you can revoke it, you can fire the person, all of those things. The only other person who can revoke a power of attorney is the court. So that's what happens a lot of times with my cases. So there was a power of attorney that was a family member and they did questionable things. So Adult Protective Services got involved and they investigated it and they found that there were things that were questionable and that the family member should not be it. And then we go to court. And one of the things that the magistrate does once they appoint a conservator is they revoke the previous, and they'll usually say any previous powers of attorney. And that doesn't stop some people. Like thieves will be thieves. You know, you can lock your house, you can do all the right things. That doesn't mean someone's never going to break in. But of course,
You ask a question, you gotta push the red light, so with the recording hears it. So if, like, I get a lot of kids that, you know, adult children that call me, and one sibling has POA and is doing bad things. And so the other sibling is trying to, you know, get things under control and get POA away. So they, I mean, do they start at the police, like they call the police, you know, to try to get the courts to revoke the POA? Is that?
that is the best way.
So it starts with a call like 911.
Well, they call it
444.
Adult Protective Services first. And then they also call the police, and Adult Protective Services will tell you, also call the police to put in that report so that they can investigate too. The other way that they can do it is they can hire an attorney, and they would be hiring an attorney to say, I don't think that my mom has capacity anymore, and my brother is her financial power of attorney, and he's doing really well financially lately, and it doesn't seem as though he's done anything different in his own life. It seems as though it's her stream of funds that are now funding his life. And I'm uncomfortable about it. And I've asked him for an accounting and he won't give it. So, you know, and all you have to have is a suspicion that it's happening. So you can do that. If you do, then go to an attorney and you say, okay, I want to petition to be my mom's conservator because my brother is doing it and I think he's doing it wrong. And I want to take this to court and figure all of this stuff out. So that's how it can start that way. And then the court doesn't so much do the investigation. The court is just deciding if there's a capacity issue with the person. And then if there is a capacity issue and anyone has agreed that this power of attorney is not doing the right things, then it would be taken away. If there's no successor though, then they have to have a conservator because they no longer have capacity to choose a power of attorney. And the most important part of that is that the person's funds pays for it. So you hire the attorney as the child and say, you know, my brother's doing terrible things. I want to become the conservator because I think what they're doing is wrong. So eventually, once you're the conservator, you would then pay the attorney out of your mom's money. So that's how it would work for payment. So in a court process, someone files a petition. For my cases, it's either Adult Protective Services that does it and then contacts me and says, can you take another case? Here's the situation. Or it's an attorney that files it on behalf of someone else. And then the attorney contacts me and says, will you take this case? You know, here's the situation. So depending on whether or not it's an emergency, there are some really scary emergencies. There are some things where the previous person that was in charge is doing things that you're never going to be able to get that money back. They have a gambling problem. They have a drug problem. So every cent that they're spending is now gone completely. If they bought themselves a house, maybe you could get the money back, but even those things seem to be difficult. But there's also emergency situations that are just self-neglect. They are not always exploitation. So your mom or dad is living by themselves and you go over and their house has changed completely. Now, they've always been a questionable housekeeper, but now it's like hoarding and there's wild animals in the house. I mean, just terrifying. Or you go there and the utilities are turned off because they didn't pay their bills and they have tons of money. So they could have afforded to, they just can't take the step from the bill comes, they write out the check or whatever. So there's all kinds of emergencies like that. There are the other types of scams that, oh my goodness, that people get involved in that are terrifying and your money is gone just that quick. You know, your entire bank account is gone. So if there's something like that happening, then there's an emergency petition that's filed and the attorney or Adult Protective Services would have to prove that that's an emergency and then get you into court the following Tuesday. So if it's a Monday when they figure this out, it might be a whole week, but it would be an emergency one. In the emergency hearing, you don't have to prove that there's incapacity. You just have to prove that there's danger. You can get appointed as an emergency guardian or a special conservator, which is often what happens in my cases. I get appointed immediately, temporarily, And then it's only for 60 days. So if we found sometimes people go to the hospital and the hospital contacts, say, Adult Protective Services, and Adult Protective Services says, ooh, this person not doing real well. I don't think they have capacity. I gave them a test. They scored really low, but maybe they just had a UTI. So once that's resolved, or once their medical issues are resolved, they actually have capacity. They just didn't while they had that medical emergency. So that's why it only goes for 60 days. So if that person doesn't actually need or meet the criteria for a guardian or conservator, they won't have one permanently. Um, and the person who is getting a guardian or conservator doesn't necessarily have to be there for the emergency hearing, because sometimes they won't be, because they won't let anybody in. They don't believe anybody. And then,
Question about
oh yes,
how do you prove it?
which one?
Well, you said they don't have to lack capacity. You just have to prove danger or whatever.
Right.
Like, how do you, like, pictures, or do you just go in front of the court and say, like, she's hoarding and there's no electricity and there's no food?
Yes, that is literally all
That's
you
all the
say.
proof you need.
Mhm.
Okay.
And you can say things like, my mom was never a great housekeeper, but oh my God, this is bad and it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Or if you're doing it more for the medical side, she's not going to appointments anymore. She's missing all of her appointments. I know she's not taking her medications because I keep picking them up and they're just piling up at the house. And when I say, you have to take them, there's an argument. So, and you can't force a person to take medication unless you're a judge. So all you can do is bring them and hope for the best. And while a person has capacity, generally they're doing all the right things for themselves. Then they appoint a court visitor. The court does, which is great because it's an impartial person who speaks to everyone that's part of the case. So in the case where the brother is very questionable in his financial power of attorney duties, or what he is doing, the court visitor will talk to him. The court visitor will talk to the other siblings. They talk to the soon-to-be protected person and ask them what their position is. Lots of times no, he's not doing anything wrong. I gave him my other property because he needed it. All of these things that, again, if you're going to get Medicaid qualified, you can't give things away like that. And so the court visitor will look at all of those things. And then the court visitor can talk to the other sibling and say, oh my, it's literally looks to me like a lot of sibling rivalry, and they're mad because mom always liked brother best. And now he's the financial power of attorney and I don't have any authority. And I'm worried about what's happening because I'm a money grubber and I wanted the money. And the court visitor, because for some reason, people speak to the court visitor and they will tell them all kinds of things that make it really obvious their true position in life. And then the court visitor will tell the court, they do a huge report and they say everything that they've seen and heard and have been told, and then what their position is, what they think. And then there's a permanent hearing after that. So it could be, like I said, the person was ill. They had a UTI. There's some other illnesses that can cause temporary, what looks like dementia. And then that gets resolved and the person's okay. And so the hearing just goes away. So they were under emergency guardianship for 2 months. They were under special conservator for 2 months, and that's it. But if it's permanent, which at least 75 or 80% of the time it goes to permanent, then everybody provides evidence. This is again why you want a power of attorney. So if you have a power of attorney that acts in your favor and takes care of you, and you have a successor in case your first choice got hit by a bus, then when you go to court, it's a closed hearing. So it's only the people involved in the case, but it is still everyone. So that means if there are 3 children and you're the person and your children think that you need a guardian and conservator, they are saying all of the dirt, and it's all on record. And even just the magistrate and the professionals, the proposed guardian and the proposed conservator, are hearing all of that. And the neuropsychologist, because then you have to prove incapacity. Sometimes if the person went to the same doctor for the last 10 or 15 years, and that doctor has been documenting all along, I see a little bit of memory issues there. I see a little more memory issues. Now I see self-neglect. Now when they come in, their clothes are dirty, their hair is dirty. They clearly are not taking the medications. If I talk to them for more than 15 minutes, they have no idea what I said at minute 1 from minute 16. So A doctor can say that. And then there can be enough other, the courts call it a preponderance of evidence that indicates that this person is incapacitated. So then the judge makes that ruling, and now you have a guardian or conservator, or you are the guardian and conservator. And then an order is issued, and then the order tells you exactly what your orders are, what you're allowed to do, what you're not. So even if you're incapacitated, even if you're under guardianship or conservatorship, or your loved one is and you're the guardian or conservator, they have the right to appeal that ruling. Now, I have clients who constantly want to appeal it. And so we'll tell them, you can get a new neuropsych if you can afford it every couple of years, and we can definitely do this again. Because I can't control the cost of what a neuropsychologist charges. And Medicare does not cover a neuropsych that is used for court. They will cover a capacity evaluation that says this person needs some help. And it might help in a future court hearing, but it's not one that can be used in court, and they're not inexpensive. They're usually $2,500 to $5,000. So you don't let people do them all of the time anyway, because they can't afford it. And they have a right to request a hearing. So with the judge, so they can come back and say, I don't agree with any of this. And I have clients who do that. They have made every bad decision. They are continuously making bad decisions. They are continuously fighting me. I have a lady who's being scammed from somewhere out of the country. This has been going on for 10 years. She has paid them hundreds of thousands of dollars. She's gotten a divorce over it. She's lost all of her children over it. She gets texts all the time from President Trump, from Elizabeth Proligar, who's the not Surgeon General, something really high up, and the head of the Monetary Fund, and Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI, which he's not anymore. And it was all in the news. And I told her that. I said, he's not even. And she said, you're wrong about that. He's explained all of that. So they text her constantly. She constantly wants to go back to court to tell the judge that I am thwarting every effort she has, because she's going to get this 64 million or 250 million, or sometimes only 750,000 and a BMW. It always changes. She wants to do that. So she can try whatever she'd like to do. She has an attorney. She has a guardian ad litem, and none of those things matter to her. She can ask that I be terminated, and it wouldn't be a bad idea if I were terminated as her conservator. But we'd need another conservator, and nobody will take this, because I have to be honest. I work with these people. You could really only pull the wool over someone's eyes one time, and then nobody trusts you. So I have to tell people, good luck with this one. It's so much work, and she's so abusive. And again, it's a professional situation where she's abusive. I don't have to look at her texts, which come all the time. But if it's a family member, that's obviously completely different. So you still have rights, even if you're under guardianship or conservatorship. You can review the rights of the guardian or conservator. I have lots of clients who they ask me for their reports, which I've already given them when they're due, because they have to get them. And I go over them, but they don't remember. So then I leave them a copy. So then they find it new every once in a while, and we have to go over it again. You can refuse to take medication when you're under guardianship or conservatorship, unless it's court ordered. And there are times when the court orders it, but not as part of the probate courts. You can have relationships. So your mom goes into a facility, and those places are like middle school. And they're married to your dad still, and they have a boyfriend. And sorry, they get to. And I have lots of people. There are times where I become the conservator because the family member kept trying to take their rights away from the person, because they were trying to do the right thing, what they think it is. They can have sex as long as both of the people are in agreement. They can have way advanced dementia and still have sex, and you cannot stop them, regardless of your religious beliefs, or that, you still love daddy, even though he died 15 years ago. They get to. They can have a child. And this is talking more about the developmentally delayed population. They can do that. They can get married, but you need court approval. They can vote. which is funny because I've seen a lot of people, and I'm talking about professionals too, that will take that right away and say, oh, it doesn't make sense. Okay, but legally, they have the right to vote. They also get to make bad decisions. So the clients that I have that are on Medicaid, they have their personal needs allowance, which if they're in a skilled nursing or a memory care facility, it is $97 a month. So as long as they don't smoke, because that's like over $80 for a carton of cigarettes, they can spend that money on whatever they would like. And honestly, they can also spend it on cigarettes. They can spend all $97 on cigarettes and you don't get to choose. I had one client who was giving all of her money to an online church. And she kept quoting to me about the tithing rule, 10% of your, okay, but your assets consist of $97 a month. So you should be giving them 10% of that. No, it's based on the whole amount, which I guarantee you nobody on TV told her that, but that was her understanding. And she got to do that, except for the times where she also smoked. So she was taking the spent cigarette butts out of the ashtray at the facility and smoking those. Okay, if you're going to choose that way, then no, you can no longer give the money to the church. You have to buy cigarettes. Or when she wasn't buying clothes that she actually had to have. And then you can suffer the natural consequences of your actions. So for her, she can give all $97 to the church, but then she has nothing else. And she would report to her social worker, nobody's buying me any clothes. I have nothing. I have no shoes. I have nothing. And then the social worker would contact me and I'd say, well, we did keep her $97 and we bought her socks and undergarments and a pair of pants and she gave them all away. So no, she doesn't have them, but those are the natural consequences. There is no more money. And as a conservator, I don't get money from anybody else. I'm literally only taking care of that person's money, whatever they have. So for guardianship and conservatorship, you need orders for some things. You are not all powerful. So if you want to revoke the previous power of attorney, the court does that. If the guardian or conservator wants you to move to another state, and that's even if it's a family member, they have to have court authority to do that. They cannot move you out of the state otherwise, or you can't move your ward out of the state. They can't place you in a facility against your will. Now, that does not mean you're not going to a facility anyway, because you probably are. If it's needed, if there's no one to take care of you, or you had 24/7 care at home, and it's $25,000 to $30,000 a month, and now your funds have run out, you're going to go to a facility. But that person can't make you go. So then you petition the court and you get a court order that says they have to go. Or sometimes even with a doctor saying, oh, they have to go. They can't change your estate plan, so you can never do that. I can't change someone's will as their conservator. I can't, if they have policies that I have to liquidate to pay their bills, I can't choose which ones based on which family member I like better as the heir. So, they have two policies and they have about the same amount of money and I cannot stand that son. So I'm going to take that policy first so that he gets nothing. I can't do that. I could probably get away with it, but you're not supposed to do that. So you take everything equally so that you're leaving the estate plan, at least percentage-wise, the same. You can't give gifts with the other person's money. And I don't even give gifts. Like you have to do a financial plan as a conservator that the court has to approve, which is basically a budget. And it says, these are all their assets I'm aware of. These are all their expenses that I'm aware of. And these are the things that I'm asking for you to allow me to pay. This person has always given $10 to every grandchild at Christmas and then for their birthdays, and they have 17 grandchildren. Well, then I do the math and I put that in the report and the court approves it. And there are cases where, because the children are saying, well, my mom always said she was paying for my children's college. Well, not now, she's not unless the court says it's okay. So you can petition the court if you'd like the court to pay, but as the conservator, I can't use their money to pay for anybody else unless they have tons of it and we can get the court to approve it. I can't divorce someone from their spouse without a court order. And I can go to court and do that. And sometimes you have to. There are situations, especially with Medicaid, financial things, that the spouse who is, say, at home, and then my client who's the conservator who's in a facility and they are running out of money and I have to get them Medicaid qualified. But the spouse at home will not provide the financial documents. The spouse at home will not do any of the things that are required. So I can say, I don't want to do this, but my only other option is, because they cannot stay at this facility and they can't come home with you, my only option is then you either provide the stuff or I have to get you divorced so that then their finances are considered separate. So I can do that. I can't create a Medicaid income trust without the court, which just means if you make too much for Medicaid to qualify you, they make you have this trust, which is just a separate bank account that some money has to go into, and they tell you how much. I can't change beneficiaries on accounts either without the court. And I cannot sell your property without the court. I sell people's properties all the time. I just have to get a court order to do so. And it's not a simple process. It's me sending this huge packet this thick with an appraisal for the property and the comps from the realtor and how many times the property was shown, how many offers I received, why I accepted the offer that I received, why they need to sell the property. And then they'll give you the order for that. Does anybody have questions? It's a lot of information.
So I have a few questions.
Okay, good.
So does all of this are the rules the same for medical powers of attorney?
Yes.
So like, I'll lump all of my craziness, like into one example, but like, I have mom living with one son and the other son doesn't think that son's doing what he should to take care of her. But that son is doing everything he can, but mom's just non-compliant. And mom's like, nope, I don't want to go to the doctor. Nope, I don't want to take my meds. So this son's like, then don't take him. I'm not taking you to the doctor. But now this son is like, you're bad and you're neglecting and abusing mom.
See, and that's a horrible one because people do have rights. They don't have to. A facility, even if your person is in a facility, they can't make them take a shower. And you can go in and complain, how dare you leave my mother dirty? My mother was never like this. And she probably wasn't. But when people have dementia, a lot of times that's one of the first, and it's astounding when that goes. So you can't make them do those things. We have people report on facilities all the time. They're not taking care of my mom. They are not. They don't change her clothes. They're not washing her hair. She's not whatever, because she doesn't have to. You just have to document. So the son who is the guardian, he needs to document that stuff. This is the hard part, or the medical power of attorney. This is the hard part because you don't know these things. So just write everything down. You write down, I went and saw mom and I brought her new meds and I saw that the old ones were there. And I said, Mom, I've already, they're all in your little planner and you're not taking them. Don't want to. Okay, but you need to, because remember, the doctor said, blah, blah, blah. Don't care, not taking them. Okay, then write that down. Write down the date and the time that you spoke to them. There are a lot of people who are not the guardian and sometimes even the guardian or the medical power of attorney, who think you can make people do things because you have that authority. We've had lots of people who say, I need you appointed as my mom's guardian because I need you to make her clean her house and I need you to make her start taking a shower and I need you to make her take her meds. You can't do any of those things. So the other son who is accusing is because he thinks those things are going to happen no matter what. He would make them happen if he was, and he might try. And he would be one that goes to court and the court takes away his authority because he can't do those things. And those things should be reported too. So the son who really thinks that the brother is doing all of that, if you really think so, report it to APS and let them question him.
Yeah.
But that's an unfortunate one too.
Yeah. I see that one a lot.
Yes.
So the other one I get is a lot of trying to wrap them all into one for an example. I mean, basically, like when somebody doesn't really have family support, it seems to happen the most often, and like friends are helping and they're realizing that people aren't paying their bills correctly. And so while those friends aren't going to probably go down the capacity and guardianship and power of attorney route, but like this person needs help managing their funds, where do I send them? Do I send them to you? Do I send them to their bank? What does that cost? Because again, a lot of my folks have pretty limited income. And then if they're having to pay $500 a month for somebody to manage their bills, like that's not. Yeah,
and that's a hard part too. Yeah. So the most successful neighbors and even children that live far away that are helping with the finances, they set everything up on auto pay.
Yep.
So at least all of those things are getting paid. And that's a first step. Now, you see that things aren't getting paid after that. Like We have clients that as their capacity declines, things were set up that way. And I was at a bank the other day and the bank manager said, what do I do with this case? This woman keeps coming in and saying, I don't want you to pay that bill anymore. Okay, not a problem. You had it on auto pay. So we thought you wanted it and we were paying it, but we'll take it off of auto pay. No problem. Okay, it's taken off of auto pay. Then the next month she comes in, why aren't you paying that bill? You have to pay that bill. And I said, you have to report that to APS because if you're seeing these indications where she is literally coming out into public to tell someone about her concerns with these things and that she needs help, she clearly needs help. Probably she doesn't only need help on these things. There's probably lots of other things that she is certain of the day she says it. And then the next time she has no idea because she doesn't remember she said any of those things. So those things should be reported too. A lot of the things should be reported. And if you're not a mandatory reporter, then you can remain anonymous, which is nice. I can't, because if you're a mandatory reporter, then they can tell anybody who reported. Adult Protective Services tends not to try to cause trouble. They don't, if you see a neighbor that you have watched them decline over the years, you maybe didn't notice at first, but all of a sudden it's really obvious now. You can report that to Adult Protective Services, even if you're a nurse or a veterinarian or a banker, so you are a mandatory reporter. Even if you are, you report it. APS does not want this person to now hate their neighbor or to not trust their neighbor because you might still be able to help them. They might be able to provide some services to them and get them some help. And now your neighbor hates you because you reported them. For financial power of attorney, though, you have to pay someone to do it unless somebody's willing to help you with it, which also risks financial exploitation. But if they can have the bank help them set it up, banks are limited in what they can do. They can't tell you what to do, although there are lots of bankers that are really over helpful, but they can't do that. So if they call, they themselves can call Adult Protective Services and say, I need help. And a lot of times Adult Protective Services reaches out to us and says, can you take a pro bono power of attorney? I've done lots of them, but I only will have so many pro bono cases at any time. Or so many cases at one time. So I can't always take them. And there's not a ton of people who will do it. Although usually after I give a presentation like this, there's always someone who says, yeah, I want to start doing that. I want to start a business like that. How do I do that? I can't even imagine how you would get started. Like, I don't know who would give you cases. You can't, go door to door with your neighbors, your elderly neighbors. I don't know how you would get started. But usually it's helpful if you already helped a person. Maybe you were in the court as a guardian or a conservator, then maybe. But that is really hard.
And so then if you do go down the whole route and you become someone's guardian, and then you're like, ooh, this is a lot. I don't want to do this anymore. How difficult is it to untangle yourself?
You have to petition the court and you have to tell the court, I really thought I could do this. I mean, we've had these cases that come from Adult Protective Services where a child said, I will do it. I am going to be the only one who's taking care of my mom. And then they realize, no, you're not. You can't do it. And again, because it's your mom, it's hard anyway. It's hard for somebody to tell you you're a thief. It's hard to tell another grown person, no, we can't do that. I'm sorry. So then you have to petition the court. Now, if you're a non-professional who's petitioning the court for something like that, they take a lot of pity on you. And if you're doing it for free, they will try to find a pro bono. There are not that many guardians and conservators in Colorado Springs, though. So there's like a handful of us that do each. I don't do any of the medical stuff. And then most of the medical people don't do any of the financial stuff. So there's only so many people that you can find.
So is a guardian only medical or guardian?
No. Well, so in this state, a guardian is only medical and a conservator is only financial. There are other states that call that person the guardian. So it's the guardian of the person or the guardian of the estate. But here in Colorado, if it's financial, it's conservator. And I'm telling you, people do not remember it. I have facilities that call me all the time and start giving me their update on the medical. I'm like, no, wait, please stop. No, it's a HIPAA violation for you, but I'm not privy to their medical information unless it affects their financial. Like if you're asking me, hey, the toenail person is coming in and this person that you're the conservator for said that they would like the toenail services, can we do it because I have to approve the cost? Then yes, we can talk about that kind of medical aspect, but otherwise no. And then I say, oh, no, I'm the conservator. Right. So I just wanted to update you that they felt, no. So the guardian or the medical power of attorney, you have to tell them, I only have your name and number here. You don't, because this has been years. And sometimes people look at the file and it's all new to them. But it's completely separate that way. I have no authority on medical. So I have
So-
cases.
So if you take your person and do the things you need to do and deem them incapacitated, they're going to need two different people managing their life from here on out.
Okay, so not necessarily, and I should have
Okay.
said that. I'm glad you asked that. So a person does not need a conservator unless they have something to conserve. Generally, that means a real property. So a house, land. If they have a car and they have their social security and they have their VA benefit or whatever, they probably don't need a conservator. The guardian can do all of that. And to make it a little bit more difficult, if you're a non-professional, you can serve as the guardian and conservator for your loved one because you're a non-professional. I cannot do that. The court won't appoint me to be, not that I would ever be a guardian because I don't know anything about it, but professionally, you cannot be a guardian and a conservator. However, you can be a guardian and be in charge of the person's money as long as it's not that level of money, like they don't have a real property. A guardian can't sell a property. They can sell a person's car though, and they can sell the personal property out of their home. They could sell, like, say, their jewelry. But yeah, so they won't always need a conservator. And for me, I'm a conservator while the person has something to conserve. So my gentleman that's 100 years old, and he's had 24/7 care at home. He's had really good jobs. He was a senator. He was in the Air Force forever. So his retirement income is almost 10 grand or a little over 10 grand. So as long as he doesn't need skilled nursing, he could go to any facility and private pay for that forever. But because of all of those things and all of the money that he had saved, he was able to stay home, which is what he wanted. And our responsibility, whether you're a private person or a professional, your responsibility is to do the least restrictive for your person. So if they want to stay home, you make it happen if it can. Now, realistically, who has 25 to 30 grand a month to pay to stay at home? Even if they had that for, they had $100,000 and they're supposed to live a few years, you're not going to spend the $100,000 to keep them at home because now they move out of their home where they've been forever into sometimes awful Medicaid facility where they're sharing a room because you spent every cent they had. So you don't want to do it that route. I lost track of what I was saying there.
No, it was good though.
It's
It's good information.
Yes, but you want to make it happen if it's possible. You want to do it financially. Oh, my gentleman that's 100. So we spent all of his money because this has been almost 3 years that he has been living at home with 24/7 caregivers. So then we had to get a reverse mortgage on his property. So that amount of money is only going to cover him for about 18 months, maybe 15 to 18 months. This man living to 100, no one in his family has ever. The oldest in his family was like maybe 80. His siblings, his cousins, his parents, nobody lived to be 100. But here he is, and he keeps graduating off of hospice like he just did recently. So he could outlive this money. He could have to move to a facility now, and then we would have to sell his house. So as long as he's living in it and he can afford that, that's what we're going to make happen. But then it could all change, which breaks my heart for him if he ever has to go to a facility after us making it possible all these years. And what you hope for is a decline enough that they don't know where they're moving to. But we have tons of clients who say, I will kill myself if you move me out of my home. I will kill myself. This is never going to happen. And then they go to a facility and 2 days later, they're like, yeah, this isn't bad. You really cannot trust, even if you've known this person most of your adult life, you cannot necessarily trust what they're saying because that is how they feel right then. And then especially people with memory deficits, they go to a facility, there's a nice structure to everything. They're mostly seeing the same people. They eat at the same time. They're staying in the same room. They're fine. They really can be fine in that situation. Doesn't mean when you go to visit them that they're not going to cry and say, get me out of here. But otherwise you ask the staff and they're happy there. Have any other questions?
I have a question. So I have a power of attorney that my father obtained through the JAG office on Fort Carson. And so I've put my eyeballs on it. I know it doesn't have anything to do with medical, but like all of the little boxes have been initialed by both of my parents. But like something that you said, like I'm the person I'm the oldest daughter, the responsible daughter. And so you said, what you said makes a lot of sense, because like if something happens to me, then my sibling, who is the non-responsible one, still living at the house for the last 20 years, what then happens? So I don't know. I just never thought about that. Like, I know everybody has the potential to die, or like you said,
Right.
get hit by a car. So I'm just like, oh my gosh. So like, are you able like to speak on like, so if I were to have somebody like you provide services, like what does that cost, and like how does that get paid for, and things of that nature?
So it's most of the professionals, and you get your fee schedule approved by the court, or at least they have it on file, so they see it. So you charge by what you're doing. So, and it's a tenth of an hour, so 0.6. So every 6 minutes, it's 0.1 of an hour. So like my highest rate is $130 an hour, and that's for the financial stuff. Then there's a $90 an hour rate, and that's the administrative stuff. And then there's, let's see, 60 or 75 an hour, and that's for doing things like property checks. If your parents are living at home and there's a plumber who's coming to the house, go meet the plumber, stay there, have him explain, see if we're going to approve this work and what all that means. So that's $75 an hour. And then there's a travel time that's $50 an hour. So it depends on how work heavy it is. It's always work heavy up front, because you have to figure out what a person's bills are, what their assets are. And then you have to, different than a power of attorney, if you have court documents, you have to submit your court documents to every single entity that that person has dealings with. So Colorado Springs Utilities, their insurance company, their mortgage company, they're everyone. And those are a nightmare. You send them off with this lovely letter saying, do all of these things. Here's my authority attached. This shows you that I can do all of these things. Let me know when, you've approved this. Never hear from those people. You have to send it 3 or 4 times. They get it and they say, oh yeah, we're going to review that. And it takes 7 to 10 days for us to review it. And then 7 to 10 days after that, we'll call you. And so all of that stuff takes a while. But you're only billing for while you're sending the letter, not the wait time in between. But in your case, if you're the power of attorney, do they have capacity? Okay, because if they have capacity, then you can encourage them to put a successor on there. So they could, if your other sibling were a better person to do it, they could put that person on there. If you had a cousin that is real close to your family, somewhere around the same age, you could, suggest that they do it, or you could do a professional. It's just a good idea. If you don't though, and you get hit by a bus and so they no longer have a power of attorney, your sister can't do anything because she doesn't have any financial or any documents to show she can. So it would probably become a court thing. And then the court would look at her, and Adult Protective Services would investigate her and say, okay, so let me make sure I understand this. You've lived here for 20 years and you pay rent, right? And you have a lease. No, I don't pay any rent. Oh, but will you pay like you pay the utilities and so it averages your rent? No, I don't pay any of those things. Oh, and you work though? No, I don't work. Okay, so how do you have any money? Well, my parents give me, oh no. Adult Protective Services is not going to say you would be a good person to be in charge of their finances. However, that person who is horrible with finances, or might even steal from their parent, have stolen from their parent and can prove it, they could still be their guardian, because there's nothing that they can do that would hurt their parent, unless say they were listed in the will and they were the only person listed in the will. And then you think they seem questionable. They might not take them to doctor's appointments hoping that they die before they spend all their money, but they'll investigate all those things. So there's still guardian conservatorship is like a safety net. So there will still be something. There is a way that they can be protected.
Yeah. My POA only comes into play if both of my parents are deemed incapacitated. And then my other question, so I live in the Northern Virginia, DC area, and I came down because I'm on my parents' bank account, and I know that my father has been rapidly going through money, just spending. And over the last 3 or 4 years, I have been coming back and forth, just, decluttering the military lifestyle and everything, and have put new flooring, new appliances. Just, I wanted to make the last couple of years just easy and peaceful. He has filled the house back up, and it is even worse than, and I just, I don't, I've reached out to the bank several times. And so, they said, well, Mary, they said, technically, you, without a power of attorney, like, you're on their accounts. So I came here on the 4th of June. Once I landed, I went straight to the bank. I did take my father with me because, I don't want to be deemed as somebody looking at me like I'm trying to do financial exploitation, because I'm not. And so the bank manager, sat down with us, and she's like, Mary, she's like, we can open up a separate account for you. She's like, we can, determine what their bills are and then just transfer that amount, because I'm concerned that he is actually spending more money than comes into their account. And I've tried to tell him, I was like, you could be homeless. Like, you could have no money left in your account. And he doesn't think anything's wrong with him. He thinks it's fine. People take financial advantage of him based on my sister's friends that come to the house, And I wish there was a way that I could go to Harbor Freight, Big R, Restore, the thrift store, all of these places that he goes to. It's like a loop. It's a pattern that he does every day. And he buys groceries every day. He has probably like 50 cans of chili beans at the house, and he's bought shelving units to house all of the food,
And he didn't used to be that way.
So, like, he's kind of been that way, but like, I've just always looked at it as a hoarding issue,
Right.
And, the psychiatrist said to me, he's like, have you ever thought about getting your dad tested for PTSD? And I was like, no. But he's become very angry. He's starting to throw things and have outbursts. And so, Lucy has been a wonderful resource.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just, I'm like, okay, is he in the onsets of dementia? I don't know,
Well, so if it gets to the point where what they're doing is dangerous, even if they've always done it, if it gets to the point where it's dangerous, then Adult Protective Services should look at the situation. If that person has capacity, and there are a lot of cases where the person has capacity and they get to destroy themselves. And that's, again, natural consequences. But if his behavior has changed, being more violent, being more, on the edge all of the time, being aggressive, all those things. Yeah, that's an indication of some kind of change.
And he has road rage. Like, he's just yelling. Like, I just found out that the air conditioning in the car is not really working wonderful. So he has the windows rolled down. And so we're driving, and he's like yelling at the top of his lungs, at people. And I'm just like, please stop.
Yep. And there's also a thing called a TrueLink card. That it's a company, and you go to like truelink.com, and it looks just like a debit card, and it's tied to another bank account. So you can put a certain amount of funds on there, a certain amount of time. You can do it. You can add more money to it all the time. There's a couple of inconveniences, like if you put money on there on Friday, it doesn't show up till Monday. If there's a holiday in there, it doesn't happen. If you transfer money on a Saturday, it doesn't happen till Tuesday, because it didn't really happen till Monday and then on Tuesday. And then you can control every single thing that it could. So if you had somebody who is, I don't know, suddenly gambling, they didn't ever gamble before. Because if you gambled your whole life and you have money to do it, and actually if you have capacity and you don't have money to do it, you still get to do it. But if you have somebody in that situation, you can give them a TrueLink card, just like a debit card, and you can make all these adjustments on what it can do.
He barely knows how to use the ATM machine. He goes into the bank several times a day and will sometimes withdraw money. Because he uses his card so much, it gets continually compromised. And so I'm attached to his emails. So I get the emails where it says Netflix was not able to pull the money from this card. So what I did was when I opened up my account, I got a debit card. And so all of those things that don't allow you to use an ACH method or credit checking account, I've used the card that was issued for my account. And that's what I would, basically transferring the funds and managing those accounts under this card because it'll never be used, or compromised under his normal outings. But
yeah, and that's very good. But the TrueLink card can do the same thing. And that way you can make it so that you say, Dad, I looked over your bills. The most money that you can spend on all of your hobbies, as it
Mhm.
were, is $300. So there's $300 a month on that card.
Mhm.
If you spend it all on the second, it's not coming on there again until the first of the next month because there's not enough money to pay the bills.
yeah.
And you can do that.
Well, and so the bank said that he had like a $3,000 a day spending limit. And I was like, oh my gosh. So then, I was having a conversation with him and I was explaining to him, the importance of him potentially hurting himself.
Mhm.
And so I asked him, and I know this probably, in his situation, I said, what do you think is fair? I said, do you feel like $500 a day as a spending limit is fair? And he's like, yeah, he's like, I think that's fair. So in the short time that I've been here, like he's already, and I'm like, I think I need to reduce it down even more. Like you might need to go to $100 a day because there's like literally nothing he needs.
Yeah.
Everything is in his house. And instead of going to look for it, he'll just go buy it again. And
Yeah.
he hangs everything. He says,
At least it's organized.
oh no, he's not.
Oh, no.
Not at all. Mm-mm. So yeah, but so my other question is, does the bank have the ability to share? Because I feel like they've never called. I've called them on 2 separate occasions. And so, I've asked them, I said, what is there anything that I can do? Like I'm concerned. And they just didn't really have any feedback except explaining to me what I could do as far as opening up the second account. But are they obligated? Can they tell you if they've ever reported a situation?
They wouldn't.
They wouldn't. Okay.
So if you have a financial power of attorney that doesn't go into effect until they're deemed incapacitated, you have no authority.
Right.
So you cannot stop your dad from making these bad decisions right now. And the bank can't help you.
Mhm.
Again, sometimes banks will overstep and they'll do all kinds of things that they legally shouldn't do.
Mhm.
They might help in your situation,
Yes.
but they're not supposed to do those things.
Okay,
So
I
you
got it.
need your power of attorney to go into effect and become irrevocable. And then you can make all those decisions,
Okay.
but it will be hard.
Okay.
So if you're somebody's financial power of attorney and they're racking up debt and you're on their bank account, what's your liability to that debt?
It depends on how you're on their bank account. But if you show like you're a co-owner on the bank account, then everything in that account is yours. But unless there's a credit card that's attached to that or like say a home equity line of credit or a personal loan on that same account, that's not your problem. And these are things that, again, children famously do this or infamously do this. They are on their parent's account. They are a power of attorney. Their parent is doing all of the bad things, all of the dangerous things. They're going to run out of money. They don't have enough money to sometimes pay their bills by the end of the month. And they go, oh, I'm not doing this with you anymore. But they don't officially not do this anymore. They can't revoke their power of attorney. They don't report it to APS. So now when APS gets involved, APS can come and investigate you. And they can have findings on you because you just left them to flounder. And I get it because, you're family members and that's your parent and you used to see them a different way. But if you took on that responsibility, now you have to untake it on the proper way. One of my daughter's friends, and she's young, like 27, but her father's much older and he's been an alcoholic his whole life. So now he has the alcohol-induced dementia and she and her 2 sisters are helping him. But she gets really annoyed with him. She's like, do that again and I'm not helping you. And I said, okay, let me explain to you what your responsibilities are. You do not have to help your dad. You can get out of this completely, but you have to do it appropriately. If you get out of this and he is not taking care of himself. So the last time this happened, he spent 4 days sitting on the floor because he couldn't get up because sometimes when he drinks, he feels like his legs don't work. So he can't get up. So for 4 days until somebody finally found him. I said, so you have to report to Adult Protective Services. Look, I've tried. I can't make him do anything. He doesn't agree with the things, or he certainly agrees because he's a good alcoholic. He says, yeah, I'm not drinking anymore. That was horrible. I would never do that again. but he's done it again my entire life. So I know this will happen and I can't do this anymore. There's nothing wrong with you saying that. You can get out of it. You just have to do it appropriately. And if it's your family member, if it is your sibling you're helping, it is your loved one, your spouse, your whatever, you can still get out of it. You can deal with your own guilt. You can figure that out. You can go to therapy. You're not helping that person. You're not helping yourself. And your relationship is going to be ruined. You can get out of it then. You just have to do it the right way. You just have to tell the right people, like, not doing this anymore. I'm not taking care of them. I'm not going to keep flying in to help with this. You can do that. And then they can investigate your sister and make sure that she's not financially exploiting them. Because there's a pretty good definition of financial exploitation. And your parents can give away as much money as they want. You can give away as much money as you want while you have capacity. So if I am supporting my child who is an adult, who is 28 years old, and now I'm supporting him from 28 and 38 and 40, I can do that. There is nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's not good for him. It is not good for society and whatever, but you can do that. As soon as I don't have capacity, I don't get to do that anymore. And if he keeps doing it while I don't have capacity, and he knows I don't because he went to the doctor and the doctor said, ooh, I'm concerned about your mom. There are some serious issues here. And he knew that. And now he's still taking the money and he's still living off of me. Now it's financial exploitation. And lots of people say they don't know it, but they knew something was wrong with what they were doing. So they'll be investigated at least.
So the other thing that brought me down here is I thought that there was some sort of fraudulent activity going on because there was large sums of money, from different locations. And so my dad ended up giving one of my sister's friends his bank card because she needed to move. And I was like, oh my God. So, and then I've been documenting everything since I've been here. There's all kinds of drug paraphernalia in the back. Like my sister and her boyfriend were living in the shed that they've made. And it's, I don't know if it sounds like I might need to call Adult Protective Services.
Oh, you don't might need to, you need to call them.
Yeah.
You really do need to call them. And you need to say, while my parents were doing better and they agreed to this lifestyle, that's one thing. I don't think my parents are okay anymore and they can't afford this. And this is what's going to happen because I'm their financial power of attorney. I'm on their bank accounts. I know what they have and what they're spending. And this isn't going to work long term.
Mm-hmm.
So you should really report it.
Yeah. Like my dad has my sister brought chickens home. My dad was allowing the chickens to come into the house along with the dogs. They have 3 cats. He's a cat community manager for the Humane Society. And so he feeds the homeless cats outside. So
yeah, you need to report.
It's a lot. And
honestly, though, if they do this neuropsych and they say they have capacity, they get to live like that. Then you have to decide if you want to keep.
Well, that's my concern because I just, when we went in, they sat in front of a computer. So the psychiatrist was online. And I was like, I don't know if this is going to go so well because both of my parents are hard of hearing. And so my dad was I don't know, they gave the MOCA tests and stuff like that. But I don't know. I'm just going to wait to get the reports back to see what they say.
Good. And there are more extensive tests and an actual neuropsychologist or geropsychologist, they will do. It can be like 4, sometimes to 8 hours and on separate days. And they do written things and they do observation and they do questions and they talk about a lot of things so that they can figure things out.
Yeah.
But sometimes it works well if you have 2 people at home and just one person doesn't have capacity. That means that all of the protections that will come in for that one person will also benefit the other person. Mm-hmm. So it can also stop some of the crazy living situations. If they don't have capacity, you can't take advantage of them then.
Right, exactly.
So that could help.
And I'm guessing, this is probably, I already know the answer to my question, but there's no way that I can go into a store and talk to a store manager and say, please don't sell another piece of item.
I mean, you can try. And my little friend with her alcoholic dad, she said, I'm going to go to the liquor store and tell them not to sell to my dad. I said, you can do that, but it's a waste of time. They can't do that. They can't take your opinion. They can't, if they saw something like he drives there and he is clearly drunk, maybe they can do something about that. Mm-hmm. But there are still laws to protect people and you still have rights. You have rights to make bad decisions. So right now he gets to make all the bad decisions he wants. He can spend every single cent out of that account. He can give it to every random person who puts their hand out. That's the scary part.
I know.
So now that you're seeing it though, Yeah, you can avoid all that, and you really should call Adult Protective Services.
Okay, thank
Just
you.
give them the whole extent of it.
So if that capacity test comes back and they're both fine, what are her options?
I don't think that they would come back as completely fine, but it might be some indications. Do they go to the doctor?
Yes, so my father doesn't think that anything is wrong with him. He does not think that he is overspending or anything like that. So the other thing that we're attempting to do is we're working with Mount Carmel to increase his VA disability rating for the PACT Act. So we started this process last year, and it's been like pulling teeth getting him to continue through the process. And so he's gotten his medical records, and I just did the same thing. I lost my train of thought. We're filing to get his disability increased. And so he has an appointment on the 25th with his regular primary care physician to assess him for Agent Orange. I just learned that he was involved with the burn pits and stuff like that in Vietnam. So I was told that that's a whole nother claim.
Oh, yeah.
And my thought process is that, okay, well, if he's deemed incapacitated, can he still go through the process? Because I'm just.
But you want to be very careful, because if they're doing it this way, if you started this a while ago, they're going to do the back pay in one lump sum. And now he's got a huge amount of money. So
exactly.
you want to be very careful. So you should figure this stuff out quickly.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. And so I have I've sent an email over to the gentleman that's been assisting my father through Mount Carmel. I think it's the El Paso County, the vet, they help, supply or fill out the forms. So I've requested a meeting with him before I leave on the 19th. And I know that I'm going to be coming back more frequently, with all of this happening. It's very inexpensive, luckily, between DC and Denver. But I'm just trying to get my brain wrapped around everything, because it's like I hear one thing from the VA and then I hear something from somebody else, and it's very confusing. It's overwhelming living in my dad's house and, trying to organize things or make things better for my mom. And it's just a lot.
Yeah.
So,
If you call Adult Protective Services and then tell them, I'm only here for this amount of time, I'll be back again. But if you could please, let's just start this, because they screen it in or out. And so you just only say the bad things, all the bad things, and you're not here. So you're not fixing things until you come back. So in the meantime, God knows what's happening. So you stress that too. Then you just keep telling them about all of the bad things that are happening, and that did not used to be the case.
Yeah.
My dad has always been heavy on personal property, but not to this level. My dad used to, he's always to some degree hoarded food and hoarded things like that. But now he's spending more money than he has, and he's never done that before. So anything that's different, even if it's slightly different, like he always hoarded, but he didn't overspend their money on hoarding, and now he is, that's a sign that there's something different.
Yeah, my mom used to organize the chaos. And so now she's so, she can't do it anymore. And so, I'm here for her as well. Like we just recently got her a walker. We went to Silver Key to the thrift store and got her a walker and some of, the provisions that make her life a little bit easier. But I think that she's dealing with depression and having to, I came here and I cleaned everything up before, and now it's back. And I feel like she just hibernates away in her space that I created, like her little sanctuary. And she just is like she just sits in the dark and watches TV, and it breaks my heart.
I did have a couple like that. And that's what the woman was, a clean freak. So
Yes.
this man was a hoarder, her husband, but he wasn't allowed to ruin the house. So he had 5 storage units, and his hoarding was literally like garbage off the street. And at church, he would take like the used coffee grounds and put those in things and put those in his storage unit. So she didn't allow them to come home until she got older, until her capacity started to decline, and then she couldn't help anymore with that stuff.
Yeah.
So by the time the family got involved, which the family was completely uninvolved because of their differences in lifestyles, and then they came back and were like, oh my God, the garbage is up to here, and there's little tiny paths through the house. And that is not the way that woman would have chosen to live had she still had capacity.
Exactly.
And he had capacity. He was still a hoarder, and that was okay. He got to be a hoarder on his own. But we had to move her out of there because we had court orders. He could not keep the place clean. He was still bringing home, literally, like he'd find to-go containers on the street and he'd bring them home and they'd
Plastic,
stack them on top of the
cardboard.
oven, the stovetop.
My dad likes to put everything in cans and he likes to hang everything. So it's just, all I've been doing is moving trash out. He's he filled the living room. Like you couldn't even sit in there.
Mhm.
Couldn't even see the floor. Like he had food in containers, you know? And
Mhm.
I'm like, you can't even see it, you know? So
And it doesn't matter. He just wants it to be there. He's probably never going to use it, but it's there. All right. Thank you.